Okay. All right. So, um, I got into a discussion with my brother a few days ago. Obviously, he already let you guys know. And it's about the whole end times scenario. Um, it's I know that there's a lot of uh, discussions, disagreements, and stuff on whether something is pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, pan-trib, whatever trib, right? Um, I, with all the hype that's been going on with about, the end times, rapture, all of the stuff that we're seeing, right? Um, there were some things that I started thinking. I was like, I never actually got into a deep Bible study about some about the details. You guys know about my stickler about details, right? So I have a question. What is your guys' position on the trib? Are you pre, mid, post, pan? If you guys can let me know. No, that's Richie. Can't answer, bro. Sorry. So somebody let me know. Um,
I don't believe the Raptors real.
Ah, wait, say that again, Speedy.
I said I don't believe the Raptors real.
All right, I'm not going that far. I do.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
I'm more of a post-trib guy, if there is. So it's confusing. So I'm just whatever happens, just be ready. That's what I got to say because
Hey,
everybody just keeps bringing up 45 different things, and it leaves with more questions than answers. And then if I say anything, then I'm the devil. So I'm just gonna be like, look, just be ready. Just be ready. That's where I go.
That's my stance.
well, here's my thing. I know that there's, a lot of debate about it. It's not to me, it's not an issue of whether or not there's a debate. I know there is. So I'm not going to, I don't want this to become a debate in this discussion. I'm going to give you guys some things that I believe are essential for us to pay attention to. And once I highlight some of these things, I think you're going to be like, what? All right, because it's well, anyway, I decided to title this The End Times According to Jesus. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because I'm going to be going over the verses where Jesus talks about the end times. And I'm going to highlight certain specifics. And I'm also going to put things in the order that Jesus puts them in. Once I do that, I think that your mind is going to be like, holy crap, I had got this completely off. So I understand that if you have disagreements, it's okay. I don't mind that. I just want you guys to kind of just take a note of what questions you have and we can address it toward the end because I got a lot of stuff to go over and I want to read the verses themselves. Okay? So we're gonna go to the synoptic gospels. Okay, we're gonna go to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So we're gonna start with Matthew. All right, and I want you guys to go to Matthew chapter 24. Okay, and I want you guys to, we're going to read the entire passages, okay, the entire thing for each of these. And once we read it, you're going to see where we're going with this. All right. So, Rick, I'm going to ask that you read Matthew chapter 24, beginning at verse 1. Okay. And I want you to go down all the way.
Hang on, hang on. Sorry, I was in the middle of talking to Richie. Um, you want me to do what?
I want you to read the Gospel of Matthew from 1 verses 1, Matthew 24 verses 1 through 31.
224.
Okay. Now, that's not the only passage we're going to read. We're going to go beyond that, but I want to go to the gist of what Jesus says. Okay. And I want to highlight some things as we read in Matthew. So, Rick, if you can read from Matthew chapter 24, from verses 1 to 31.
Okay. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming, and of the end of the age? And Jesus answered and said to them, take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the cloud of heavens with power and great glory, and he will send his angels with a great sound of trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
Okay. I think that it's pretty straightforward when you read it. I'm sure, Jamal, I'm sure you've looked at this passage and I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay. Before we go on to the other gospels, I want to kind of go over some details here. Okay. So in the very beginning of the chapter, I want you to notice where Jesus is and who he's talking to. So, Jamal, where does the Bible say that Jesus was in this discussion in Matthew?
Mount of Olives, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but what does it say? It says that he went out and departed from where? He's
Uh, and Jesus went out and departed from the temple.
okay, so he departed the temple. He's not in the temple, okay? And he is with his disciples, and it says that his disciples came to him to show him about the buildings of the temple. All right. And he sat on the mountain of olives with them. This is where this discussion is taking place. It's very important that we notice these details. Okay. And then Jesus proceeds to tell them basically, do you see not all these things? Verily I say to you, there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. All right. So they're specifically asking him in Matthew about the buildings of the temple. Okay, very important. And it says that when he sat upon the Mountain of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Now, it doesn't give us a number of the disciples, it just says the disciples. Okay, so for all we know, in the Gospel of Matthew, all 12 disciples are there with him. Okay, but they come to him privately and they ask him three questions. What are the three questions that they ask him?
You're asking me.
Anybody, whoever answers first. It's in verse 3.
When will all these things be? What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?
So they're asking him three things. When are these things that he just mentioned are going to happen? Okay? When is that going to happen? And then they ask him, and what will be the sign of your coming? That's number 2. And then they ask him, when is the end of the world? Number 3. All right, so there's the three questions. I want you to pay close attention because that's what they're talking about, okay? So you go down now to the very next verses, and Jesus begins with what he does in all the parables or in all the gospels. He says that Jesus answered said to them, "Take heed that no man deceive you." I think that what we're going to talk about tonight is going to play a little bit into this whole thing about how some of us might be deceived about our positions, regardless of what they are. Okay. But he says something interesting. He says that many will come in his name saying that he is Christ. This is not saying that they're going to say, I am Christ. He's saying that many are going to come in his name saying that Jesus is the Messiah, but they're deceiving the people. Okay. And then it says that they're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. This is really popular, basic stuff. Okay. And he says that be not troubled, see that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Remember, they're asking him about those three things. They're asking him about when are those things going to happen, about the buildings of the temple. They're asking him when will be the sign of his coming and of the end of the world. So he's telling them the end is not coming yet. All right. But this is what's going to happen because nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. So everything that we just read up to this point, we can categorize it according to what Jesus says in Matthew, that it is the beginning of sorrows. These are the beginning of sorrows. Okay? You guys understand that? Is it possible if we can keep the microphones on at this point? Because I'm going to be asking you guys
Yeah,
some questions.
I can see that. These are just the beginning of sorrows.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So then he goes to a list of things, and I want you to see the very next verse. He says, because after the beginning of sorrows, he says, then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and they shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. So that follows after the beginning of sorrows. And he says, and then many shall be offended and shall betray one another and shall hate one another. So that's the next thing that follows. And many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many. And because the iniquity shall abound, the love of many will wax cold. And he says, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. So So far, he's saying you need whoever endures to the end. He's talking about the end of the world here, right? And he says something interesting here. He said that this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. I want you to just keep a notice of that, okay? The gospel has to be preached in all the world for a witness to the nations, and then the end will come. Okay, so all of this is about the end. And then he talks about the abomination of desolation. If you guys aren't familiar, the abomination of desolation is actually mentioned in the book of Daniel in the Old Testament. Okay, so the a lot of people have made the comment that the abomination of desolation is something that is akin to what had happened in the past, where basically it's I believe that he was making a reference to Antiochus Epiphanes, who went and basically sacrificed a pig on the altar, and it led to the Maccabean revolt. All right, it's where we the history of where the Jews rebelled against the Romans, and they ended up dying on the hill of Masada. Okay, so a lot of people are saying that that was the fulfillment of that, except that now Jesus is saying that the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, that that same thing will happen again in the future. So a lot of people thought that the fulfillment of the abomination of desolation occurred during the Maccabees. Jesus is saying, no, this is still something that's going to happen again. So I want you to notice that there's a repetition of events. Okay. There are some events that are that have a historical context in the past that have a similar fulfillment in the future. This is important for you to grasp some of the details regarding the differences in the Gospels, because one of the things that I want you to take away from this study, and you guys know that I am a stickler for the details, okay? So when you look at the Gospels, you're going to have some variances and some things, and sometimes some things are identical and some things are a little bit different and some things are completely off. So I want you to just, for the time being, focus on Matthew chapter 24. Okay? Because then he says that right after this thing about the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, he says, then let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down or take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Woe to them that are with child, and to those who give suck in those days. Pray that your flight be not in the winter, nor in the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation. Now, this is really important because we know that Jesus is referring to the end of days. This is the great tribulation. This is that last period of years right before Jesus arrives to set up his kingdom and get it all over with. Okay.
Stan, is this great tribulation? Is this what is considered the last 3.5 years of the 7 year tribulation? Or is this like the full 7 years?
Uh, it's not really clear. This passage does not clarify that. We can say that the Great Tribulation encompasses the entire 7 year period, but we know that certain events, like the wrath of God, does not come until the midpoint of that 7 year period. But the passages here, for you to say that this is the second half of that 7 year period, it's really speculation on anybody's part. Okay, or
No, I remember because I remember something, and I just this could just be just stuff that you learn from like different teachers and stuff. But I remember them saying something that like the abomination of desolation is going to happen in the middle of this.
yeah, and so this is where like I said, that's an interpretive approach to those events. So for the sake of this discussion, let's assume that that is the second half of the tribulation. Okay, let's just assume it's the last 3.5 years. All right, first, and it says, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as not was since the beginning of the world, nor to this time, nor ever shall be. And except those days shall be shortened, there shall no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened." And he says, "And if any man shall say to you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christ. Now, this is where Jesus is saying that there will be a time where others will show up and say, I am Christ. I'm the Messiah. A lot of people are going to start arising, and we have people right now in the world who are saying, I'm the Messiah. Okay, there's all kinds of things starting to happen even now. Okay, but this is going to be a predominant thing during that time, and I have a feeling it has to do with some of the things that are leading up to it. Okay, but for the time being, he says to them that, look, I'm warning you in advance. This is what's going to happen. And if they say to you, behold, he's in the desert, or don't go, if he's in the secret chambers, don't believe him. For as the lightning comes out of the east and shines to the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. That's a geographical context which matters. Okay. He's coming from the east to the west. Okay. And part of that has to do with the fact that the prophets and even Jewish tradition all say that the Messiah will enter in through the east gate. He's going to come from the east, going west into the city of Jerusalem. Okay, so as lightning shines from the east to the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. And then he says this cryptic verse, for wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Okay, I'm not going to get into what that means. There's a lot more cryptic to that. We'll get into that in another time. But here's the part that we're coming to the end of this section of the discussion. So, and it says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And here's the verse 30 is where he talks about the sign of his coming and how they will see him coming. Okay. And I want you to read it because I know that how Rick read it earlier. It says this. I'm going to read it from the King James, and I want you to notice a detail. Okay. And it says, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now, what I want you to notice is that how he mentions here, okay, that Jesus is coming in the clouds of heaven. Okay. And it says that he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds. Now, unless you're living in Israel and you have an agricultural background, you might miss this one little detail. When he says that he will gather his elect from the four winds, that is what's referred to as a gleaning term. Okay? So we mentioned before, and I've mentioned this to you guys before, all right? I am not just a pre-trib or a mid-trib or post-trib. I actually think that there's fulfillment in all three. I believe that pre-trib and mid-trib and post-trib all apply. They're just the thing is that it's a different set of circumstances for each. And the concept of the pre, mid, or post that I come to with that is for several reasons. Not the least of which is that it is often referred to in the Bible as a harvest. You guys agree? You can say it, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
It's called the harvest, right? So here's the thing. In Israel, the harvest has three phases. It has what's referred to as the first fruits, and then it has the harvest, and then it has what's referred to as the gleanings, the gleaning phase. You have the first fruits phase, the harvest phase, and the gleanings. And all three are called the harvest. They're part of the harvest. Okay? So the first fruits has to do with whenever you plant a field, you have certain crops that basically get mature before the rest. They mature before the majority of the harvest. It's just like a small amount that is that's actually reaped before the season of the harvest. Okay? That is referred to as the first fruits, and that is what is offered to God, okay, by the people during the harvest season. Because the rest of the harvest, they don't have to give anything else. All right. It's the first fruits that they have to offer, the first fruits of their increase. So that's what the first fruit is. The harvest is when the majority of everything is gathered up, is when they collect all of the grain, everything that they've planted, that's what they get. However, there are certain parts of the field or of the harvest or of the grain or whatever the crop it is that they have planted. Some of that is not ripe yet. So the first fruits are those that riped early, the ones that became mature early before the harvest. The gleanings is the bunch of crop that is kind of delayed. It's slowed down. Okay, the rest of the harvest has been reaped, but you got a section of the fields that are not yet harvested because they're not ripened yet. They're not matured. Now, the gleanings were intended to that because the first fruits belong to God, okay, and they had to bring that to the tabernacle and then later to the temple. The first fruits go to the Levitical to support the Levites. The harvest goes to the family that owns the fields, okay? But the gleanings were intended to be a part of the uh, uh, social system of support for widows, for the poor, for orphans, even people who are foreigners. Okay, so it was. Say again. Okay, so
Probably just an echo.
gotcha. So what happens is that the uh, when the gleanings were to take place, they were supposed to not, the children of Israel were commanded, when you take up your harvest, don't take up everything in your harvest, but leave the four corners of your harvest available for the poor and the needy, the for the widow, for the orphan, all right, and for the foreigner, so that they can have something because they can't afford it. They don't own the land. So God tells them that they have to have that they have to leave a portion called the gleanings so that they can benefit from it. And that was referred to as the four corners of your field: north, south, east, and west. Okay? So when he says the four corners, it has a direct reference to this section over here where it says, from the four winds. He will send and gather together his elect from the four winds. It's drawing from the imagery of the harvest, that this is where the harvest is being reaped, and the four corners. This is the gleaning phase of the harvest. Okay? So right, so this is where I want you to keep that in mind, because the harvest, that is how it was handled in Israel. You had first fruits, you had the harvest, and then you had the gleanings. Okay? Now, the difference between Matthew and the other gospels, it actually comes a little bit later, but basically the next few verses, from verses 32 to about verse 40. The next 8 verses are verses that kind of share some similarity, okay, with the other gospels too. So he says in verse 32, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when you shall see these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. All right. We can assume that when he says that it is near, we're assuming that it's the end. Okay. Because remember, this entire time he's been saying, the end is not yet. Then he says, then shall the end come, then the end, and now the end comes, right? So now he's giving you this context. And he says, This, verily I say to you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. But of that day and hour knows no man, no, not the angels in heaven, but my Father only. But here's the thing. Matthew gives a heck of a lot more detail than any of the other gospels, because everything that he says here forward, you don't find in any of the other gospels. Okay? He says, For as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Right? And he says, and he goes about the whole thing about Noah. And then he says, now remember what I told you. There's a sequence of events. He says, this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and this happens, then this is going to happen. All right. So I want you to notice the sequence of events here. All right. So when he gives this parable, he says about the days of Noah, right? When this stuff about Noah it becomes a fulfillment, he says, then shall two be in the field. The one shall be taken and the other left. Two women will be grinding at the mill. One shall be taken and the other left. Right? So now he talks about a parable about two being in the field and two being in the mill. All right? And he says, Watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be also ready, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. Okay? Now here's the thing. Now he gets into a series of parables. Okay? Again, these are parables that are not found in the other gospels. And these parables have everything to do with the end of days and the end times. And it has to do with the three questions they asked. When are these things going to happen that you said? What will be the sign of your coming? And when is the end of the world? Okay? So they asked them three questions, and this set of parables is part of his answer to all three of those questions. All right. So in verse 45, it says, Who then is that faithful and wise servant whom his Lord has made ruler over his household to give them their meat in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he comes, shall find so doing. Verily I say to you, he shall make him ruler over all his goods. But and if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and to drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. And there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay? He says that. Now look at the next parable. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. And they that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom comes. Go you out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us your oil, for your lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you, but go ye rather to them that sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say to you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. And then he gets into another parable. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto them, and unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability. Straightway took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents. And likewise, he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. But he that had received 1 went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. So he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained them, and besides give 5 talents more. And his Lord said to him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. He also that had received 2 talents and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I've gained 2 other talents beside them. His Lord said to them, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art an hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth, and lo, thou hast that is thine. And his Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sow not, and gather where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money into the exchangers. And then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which hath 10 talents. For every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. He tells all these parables, and then he goes on to some other details, and he says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory. This is now the third time that he's talking about this. And all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. And then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungered, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee a hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? And when saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, and naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say to you, inasmuch as you have done it unto the one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Then shall he say also to them on the left hand, Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was an hungered, and you gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you took me not in. Naked, and you clothed me not. Sick and in prison, and you visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you did it not to the one of the least of these, you did it not unto me. These shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous unto life eternal. This entire passage, all the entire thing from Matthew 25, the entire chapter, is the longest chapter relating to Jesus talking about the end times. Okay? He says a lot here in Matthew. Okay, so I want you guys to keep in mind everything that we just read, because I'm going to bring all these things up again later, but I'm going to show you some details. So what I want you to notice, okay, is that now I want you guys to go to the Gospel of Mark. And what I want you to notice, okay, now obviously Mark is not nearly as long as Matthew. Okay, as a matter of fact, it's the shortest I think, of all the Gospels. So he's not going to give too much detail except to say this. He gives some details that Matthew does not, just some, but he follows just about in the same pattern, sequence of events. Really important, okay? Because I want you to understand that Mark and Matthew are talking about the same event, but the difference is that there are certain things that he mentions in Matthew that is not mentioned in Mark. And that's all the other stuff that I just read to you, okay? So I want to go to Mark chapter 13, beginning at verse 1. All right, Jari, could you do me a favor? Could you read Mark 13, the 13th chapter, beginning of verse 1, and just read the whole thing regarding regarding this? Because all the way up until let's see here, up until verse 37. So it's the whole chapter.
So Mark 13:1 through
37.
37.
Yes, basically the whole chapter.
Okay. All right, here we go. Uh, okay. As as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings."
All right, real quick, before you continue. When he came out of the temple in Matthew, what does it say that he came? How many disciples? It just said his disciples. How many disciples are here?
Uh,
One.
One, right? So one
uh,
of his disciples said to him. So I want you to, the way it's written, it just means that he had disciples that were with him and only one of them spoke. It wasn't that they all spoke simultaneously together, you know, and you have all these voices, saying, Master, it wasn't like that. All right. So it was a
mm,
group of disciples. We don't know how many in Matthew, but we see here now that there's one in particular that speaks. Go ahead.
okay.
Verse 2.
So he said, "Look, teacher, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings." And Jesus said to him, "Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down."
Okay. Keep reading.
Um,
So
as he
so
sat,
so far, everything's some bars pretty much the same. There's some minor details, but everything's the same. Go ahead, continue.
okay, and and as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately,
So right
"Tell
now
it."
we got Peter, James, and John and Andrew. Four guys are now coming to him privately. So now we know that we have at least now four disciples that are specifically mentioned. So Mark so far hasn't really changed the story, but except to say to add a few details that were generalized in Matthew. Okay. And I want you now to pay attention to the questions that they ask here. Go ahead.
Okay. "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when all these things are about to be accomplished?" And Jesus began to say
All right,
to them,
real quick. So in Mark, he only mentions two, possibly three questions, but it's two questions here. When shall these things be? Which is exactly what they said in Matthew. And then he says, but what shall be the sign? And when all these things shall be fulfilled. So they're asking about a sign as well as what's going to follow. So this is a general way of saying the same thing that he said in Matthew. So I want you so far, everything's pretty much in alignment. But go ahead, continue.
okay. And Jesus began to say to them, "See that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take." Can you give me 1 second? Babe, please lower that. Thank you. I hear myself. I'm sorry. I hear myself through the wall. Sorry, I'm reading and she's listening in and I hear myself through the wall. Anyways, okay. It's just weird. Okay. Um Many will come. Okay, I am he, and they will lead many astray. And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. And there will be famines. These are but the beginning of the birth pains.
All right. So this in your translation it says the birth pangs. The beginning of sorrows is the term for birth pangs. This is like a woman goes into, the birth pangs right before she goes into labor. She has the contractions. That's referred to as sorrows. Okay. So when it says the beginning of sorrows or the beginning of birth pains, everything that he just mentioned, again, these are the beginnings of sorrows. These are the birth pangs. Same thing. All right, continue.
Okay. Uh, but be on your guard, for they will deliver you over to councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them. And the gospel must first be proclaimed to all nations. And when they bring you to trial and deliver you over, do not be anxious beforehand what you are here to say, but say whatever is given you in that hour, for it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. And brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his child, and children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated for all my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. Do you want me to keep going?
You going?
Okay. The abomination of desolation. But when you see the abomination of desolation standing where he ought not to be, let the reader understand. Then, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is in the housetop not go down, nor enter his house to take anything out. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant, for those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that that may not happen in winter, for in those days there will be such tribulation and has not been from, that has not been from the beginning of the creation that God created until now and never will be. And if the Lord had not cut short those days, had cut short the days, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect whom he chose, he shortened the days. And then, if anyone says to you, "Look, here is the Christ," or "Look, here he is," do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, the elect. But be on guard. I have told you all things beforehand. Uh, but in those days, after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened and moon will not give its light, and stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory, and then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know the summer is near. So also you will see these things taking place. You know that he is near at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But concerning that day or that hour, no one knows. It's so funny because it really is mad short compared to the other one.
Yeah.
No one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when that time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake.
Okay. So I want you, so you obviously can tell that the differences between Matthew and Mark are huge. okay? In the sense that from this point forward, Matthew goes on and on and on and on, okay? Matthew goes on and on and on. So I want you to notice, okay, that Mark basically follows the same sequence of events. Everything happens, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. This happens first, you know, but when they shall see you this is and deliver you up, take no thought, you know, and it says, now the brother shall betray the brother to death, and so on and so forth, and you should be hated, right? But when you shall see this happen, the abomination of desolation, right? And then let him that is on the house not go down, blah blah blah. There is this the structure of Mark and Matthew follow basically the same structure. And when he talks about the abomination of desolation, obviously he's talking, about the same period of time, right? Because remember, they asked him in Mark. What's interesting is that in Mark, they kind of generalize the sign and the all the things that could happen. And so in Mark, he literally condenses it and gives you a generalized overview of what is to come, and it ends there. Okay. Are you guys with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Leapy, are you still on there? Actually, my brother's not here. Sorry. Okay.
Oh.
No,
So,
I am here. I'm here. I got disconnected and I don't know what happened, but I'm back on. Don't worry about it.
okay. Okay. So, and I want you to notice again on verse 26, where it says, and then they shall, again, remember the progression of events, and then they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. Okay. And then he shall send his angels and gather together his elect from the four winds. There's that four winds term again. Again, referring to that gleanings term that I mentioned to you guys earlier. Okay. From the uttermost parts of the earth to the uttermost parts of heaven. And then he goes into the parable of the fig tree, talk about heaven and earth. And I'm not going to go into all the details. I just want you just to show you that both Matthew and Mark, up to this point, are basically the same thing. And he's talking to the same peoples in the same place. We read in the beginning of Mark how that he was, in fact, outside of the temple and that he was sitting on the mountain of Olives. Okay?
Hmm.
I want you to go and turn with me to Luke, because now is where I throw the wrench in your gears. Okay? Because this is super. All right. Ben, so here we go. All right. Uh, Jamal, I want you to turn with me real quick to Luke chapter 20.
Okay.
I want you to read the very first verse of chapter 20.
And it came to pass that on one of those days, as he taught the people in the temple and preached the gospel, the chief priests and the scribes came up upon him with the elders
So the very first verse, it tells you that he's where?
in the temple.
In the temple.
Yeah, I noticed that one. That's
Okay. So now I want you to note that he doesn't get into this yet about the end times. That's in the next chapter. But everything from Luke chapter 20 into Luke 21, he is still in the temple. Now go to chapter 21 and read the first few verses. Just start from verse 1 of chapter 21, Jamal, because I
okay.
want you to read this, okay?
And he looked up and saw the rich men casting their gifts into the treasury. And he saw also a certain poor widow casting in thither 2 mites. And he said, of a truth I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast in more than they all.
All right, so where is he right now?
In the temple.
He's still in the
The
temple.
temple. He's in the temple, in the area of the treasury where people are bringing their offerings into the temple. That's where they're at. Okay, continue.
For all these have of their abundance cast in unto the offerings of God. But she of her penury, how do we say that, King James?
Penury, yeah, that's fine.
Penury, good. Hath cast in all the living that she had. And as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said, As
real quick.
Mhm.
So I want you to notice, where did Matthew and Mark say that he was at when he has this conversation?
Is this the same conversation that was outside of the temple?
I'm asking you
In
a
the
question
temple.
about Matthew and Mark.
No, it's not. This is different.
Outside
Right. Matthew and Mark are both outside of the temple on the Mountain of Olives.
And it's for his disciples privately,
And
right?
it's just
Yeah,
his disciples privately.
private.
In verse 5, what does it say?
And as some spake of the temple, how
Some spoke of the temple. It's a general term. It's literally a mixed crowd of people. It's not just the disciples in the temple. It's an entire crowd of people in the temple. Think about this, okay? Because this in Luke is a completely separate conversation.
it must be
It is. It has to be. Because in here in Luke, he's in the temple talking to the general public.
Hmm.
at a different
Continue.
time.
Continue.
Oh, where are we? Verse 6.
Start at verse 6 again.
As for these things which you all behold, the days will come in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another, that shall not be thrown down.
All right.
Eh,
So, real quick, before you continue, I want to just pause to give you a bit of a context. Jesus is having a separate conversation in the temple before he leaves the temple to talk privately to his disciples. So, this should tell you that they're asking him privately about something that he is saying here. Okay?
Mm.
All right? I want you to understand that because he is saying something similar, and I want you to grasp this concept. And I've showed you this in other Bible studies. A lot of times, Jesus will use similar language in separate conversations, but he's putting the focus on something different. And that is the case here. Because what you're going to read in Luke is very different from what you read in Matthew and Mark. All right, start at verse 7. Continue, Jamal.
And they asked him, okay, good, I'm not muted. And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be?
Okay.
And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass?
All right, so their questions are specific to what?
And is it specific to verse 6?
Yeah,
Yeah,
specific to the temple, like of the
specific
temple
to the
being
temple.
destroyed.
They're
Yeah,
asking, the two questions they're asking
that
is,
with
when
their
are these things about the stones and everything, when are these things going to happen? And what sign will there be when these things come to pass? They're not asking him about the end of the world.
right. They're asking him about the end of the temple.
Exactly, the destruction of the temple, all that stuff. Okay, now, so I want you to keep that in mind. Now, continue.
Okay. And he said,
All right,
take
but
heed.
real quick. We're about to get into that whole thing about the beginnings of sorrows, okay? But I want you to keep in mind of the sequence of events that we read in Matthew and in Mark, okay? Go ahead.
Okay.
Keep reading.
And he said, take heed that you all be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and the time draweth near. Go you all not, therefore, after them. But when you all shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. Then he said unto them, nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines and pestilences, and fearful sights and great signs shall therefore be from heaven. But before all these,
Whoa, stop. What did he just say?
he said before, didn't he say after these in the other one?
Yeah, he did. So everything that you're about to read happens before the birth pangs, before the sorrows.
Hmm.
Huh? All right. Continue.
But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Continue.
All right, keep reading.
Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what you all shall answer.
Notice how it's starting. The shift in the change is happening right now. Watch.
For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And you all shall be betrayed, both by parent and brethren, and kinsfolk and friends. And some of you shall they cause to be put to death. And you all shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But there shall not an hair of your head perish. In your patience possess you all your souls. And when you all shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is near. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people.
So far, he's specifically mentioning everything having to do with what? The temple, right? Everything has to do with this period. And if you notice, it's similar language, but the timing is different. So you see a repetition of events happening on a bigger scale. What's happening here is specific to this people, to the Jews, to Israel. What happens in Matthew and Mark is to the nations. Here, it's just Israel. Continue.
Where am I?
23.
Oh, 23? Yeah. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations.
Stop right there. When did this happen in history?
70.
70 AD. Exactly.
Yeah.
That was the destruction of the temple.
He's not talking about the end of the age
No,
here.
he's not.
He's
Everything
talking
that he's talking about.
something that's so good, because I was talking to somebody, and they were talking about the end of the age. They used that, and I was like, if the end of the age is at 70 AD, then Jesus said, "I will be with you until the end of the age." And if the end of the age is 70 AD, then we've been without Jesus for that. So I was like, that can't be it.
And this is why that preterists try to say that everything happened by the destruction of the temple. It's because of this.
Oh, see, that's what I'm talking about. We were just talking about this.
Okay. So I want you to notice now, okay? Everything that he said up to this point, everything is before 70 AD up until this point where they're led away captive. So start reading again from verse 24.
All right. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
All right. That is current right now. This is where we are, the times of the Gentiles. And it says, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of who?
Gentiles.
The Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles. I have a question. When did Israel take Jerusalem back from the Gentiles?
1948.
40.
No.
1948. Yeah.
67.
Oh, yeah. 1967. That's right. Yeah.
67.
All right. So up to verse 24, it's talking about 1967. That's when they took back Jerusalem. That's when Jerusalem was trodden down until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So 1967 comes around. That means that we are now approaching or have just simply passed the times of the Gentiles fulfillment.
Hmm.
Remember,
Like the fullness
everything
of
that we're reading, hey, listen, pay attention. Everything that we're reading right now is before the beginning of sorrows. Continue. Verse
and there
25.
shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, and the sea of the waves roaring. Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near.
All right. Everything that you just read happens before the beginning of sorrows.
Hmm.
Everything, including when they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Okay.
Oh, guys, this is so good. I
All
know
right.
where this is going.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Right now, we've read everything that happens. Now, in chronology, what you just read happens before the beginnings of sorrows. Because remember, Jesus said, but before all of the beginning of sorrows, these things, this is what's going to happen. So Matthew and Mark definitely look like a pre-trib. Luke, not so much. Because there's one that happens before the one in Matthew and Luke.
No, you mean Matthew and
I'm sorry,
Mark seem
Matthew
post
and
trib
Mark. Matthew and Mark. This
is
the one happens,
yeah,
the Luke
post.
happens before the ones in Matthew and Mark. But there's more. There's more details here. Okay. Because this is where I want you guys to like, oh, wait a minute. There's another one. And this one happens before, right? So let's keep reading because now he gets into a parable. And I want you to notice a significant detail. Verse 29. Go ahead, read. Jamal. Go ahead.
Yeah, it takes me a while to unmute on this thing. Is this all right? Verse 29. And he spake to them a parable. Behold the fig tree and all the trees.
Stop.
Mm-hmm.
When he talks in Matthew and in Mark, what does he say?
Kingdom of heaven.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Oh, and
Matthew and
in
Mark,
both of them.
in both of them, it says what?
Where specifically?
In verse 28 in Mark and verse 32 in Matthew. I'll just read it because I have it here in front of me. Okay. He says, now learn a parable of the fig tree.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In Matthew and Mark, he is talking about a parable of the fig tree. Here in Luke, he's giving them a parable where he's talking about the fig tree and all the trees. This is much broader than it is in Matthew and Mark. Okay?
Mm.
Continue.
All right. When they now shoot forth, you all see and know of your own selves that summer is now nigh at hand. So likewise, you all, when you all see these things come to pass, know you all that the kingdom of God is near at hand. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with
Surfeiting.
No, I was just getting a call. All right, where am I? 34. All right, and take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting. Surfing. No, that's not, my brain read that wrong.
Surfeiting. Yeah,
And
surfeiting. Yeah.
drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch you all therefore, and pray always, that you all may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. And in that day, and in the daytime, he was teaching in the temple, yeah. And at night he went out and abode in the mount that is called the Mount of Olives. So is that's when the disciples, they do this all the time. They come up to him later and they ask him, "Would you
Yeah,
really?"
exactly. Exactly. And then in verse 38, it says, and all the people came early in the morning to him in the temple for to hear him. So everything that he's talking about here in Luke is in the temple. His disciples come to him privately in Matthew and Mark. And he gives different details for them because there's
Well,
other.
wait a second. Wait a second. When he's talking to them in Matthew and Mark, he's not, they're not pointing at the temple. They're just pointing at all the rest of the buildings. They're pointing out at the city sitting on this Mount of Olives, correct? So they're saying, when does this happen that all of this will go away? Not necessarily the
No, no,
temple.
no, no. He was actually sitting up against the temple. The Mount of Olives is literally just outside the temple wall. And so from
Oh,
the
okay.
temple wall, you can see all the buildings of the temple. Okay. So this is where Jesus is sitting with his disciples. In Luke, he's talking to the people in general. And this is where it ends in Luke. It doesn't have any more about the end times because it's not about the end times. It is, but it isn't. Because the events in Luke up until the point before the fig tree parable, all of that happens before the beginnings of sorrows.
Mm.
So now here I'm going to highlight some things for you, some details, okay? Because I think you're going to find these details maybe possibly disturbing. I don't know. All right, but basically in Matthew and Mark, no one knows either the day nor the hour. Okay? He says no one knows either the day or the hour. But in Luke, those who don't know the day nor the hour are called the earth dwellers, or those who dwell on the earth. Think that. Okay? In the Gospel of Matthew, he talks about the days of Noah. All right? However, in the Gospel of Matthew is the days of Noah. In the Gospel of Luke, he talks about a man who takes a far journey, giving servants authority. But in Luke, believers are warned to avoid any conduct that makes them ignorant of the day and hour because they're expected to know. All right. Here's okay, here we go. Okay. But aside from the fact that in Luke, the believers are those who see the Son of Man coming in a cloud before the beginning of sorrows. Mark and Matthew, they see the Son of Man coming after, way after. Remember, the end shall not is not yet for
But
nations to rise, right? So the Son of Man coming later is way later.
also it says something different, right? When it says coming later.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay, okay, all right.
Right. In Matthew, it talks about two being in the field and two being in the mill. He talks about the good man or the caretaker with the thief. He talks about a faithful servant or evil servant. He talks about the 10 virgins. He talks about the talents, right? Right. So, and then he talks about the sheep and the goats. So I want you to notice some details about these parables. Okay. Because, because when he talks about the two in the field, It's a future event. Two shall be in the fields, future. It's always, whenever it's future, it's two groups. He says, two shall be in the mill, future, two groups. Then he gives an intermission, like a pause, and he talks about the good man of the house and the thief. He's talking about the good man of the house is the caretaker. He's talking about certain people, and then he's talking about himself as a thief. Okay? And then he goes into the faithful servant or evil servant. And again, the tense is future, two groups, faithful servant, evil servant. Then, listen to this. He talks about the 10 virgins. This is something yet future. But there are two groups, sort of. 5 virgins, 5 wise, and 5 foolish. Then he goes into another parable about the talents. And the parable of the talents is in the present tense. How many groups are there? 3.
That's interesting.
All right. And then he goes back to a future tense with the sheeps and the goats. There are 2. Okay. Now here's what's interesting. Okay, because you may not have paid attention to these details, because I'm going to get into some of these things about the parables. Okay. So in the faithful and wise servant, evil, he goes into that whole dichotomy about something future. However, recently I had an interesting, my church had this thing about the end times, right? We wanted to talk about Revelation, all that stuff. So, great. So they started talking about the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins. Now, how many of you, and if you guys can get off of just get on the mic. So I want you guys to respond like right immediately for me, okay? So I want you to think about this, okay? So how many of you have heard the teachings on the virgins? 10 virgins, 5 wise, 5 foolish. And they always tell you, okay, you got to be ready, right? That's the parable. You got to be ready for the coming of Christ. And people who are really inclined post-trib are always bringing this up. It's the same thing. It's always the same thing. However, okay, what is he talking about in that parable?
I'm talking about the marriage.
Exactly.
And then
So let's talk about that, okay? Because in Jewish culture, there's a ceremony and there's a system in place where people go to celebrate a marriage. All right. Jesus came from what town? What town did he live in?
Nazareth.
Nazareth, which is a part of
Galilee.
Galilee, right? All of him and his disciples come from Galilee. Okay? What is specifically interesting about Galilee is that Galilee has a wedding ceremony that is different from the rest of the nation. They found recent archaeological evidence that they found of wedding ceremonies in Galilee that are unique only to Galilee, that you don't find any other place in Israel. That is the model that Jesus is referring to. Okay? So here's the thing. What happens is that there's a period of time when the father of the bride and the father of the bridegroom come together and they do a transaction where they sign a ketubah. A ketubah is a contract. I believe we talked about it during the marriage and divorce ceremony. Okay, where they make an exchange and they basically come to terms. And the woman, now the husband or the bridegroom, sorry, he is presented to both the bride and the bride's father by his own father. He says, "Look, this is my son. I want your daughter for him as a wife." Like, okay, let's have a discussion. So they go to the gates of the city. They do all of this transaction, and everybody there is witnessing this. Okay, and he tells them, he say, "Okay, do you agree? Do you agree to marry him?" And she has to agree by drinking a cup of wine. She eats bread and drinks wine. And she tells him that she agrees by drinking the cup of wine and eating of the bread. Okay? And then the bridegroom says to her, "I will not drink of this cup again until I drink it new with you in my father's house." And at that point, they part ways, and the bridegroom goes to build his house as an attachment to his father's house. Okay? That's what he does. So over a period of a year or 2 years, depending on what the father's discretion is, the son, who is the bridegroom, is building the house, that is building a dwelling place for his bride next to the father's house. He's basically expanding. His father's house used to be his grandfather's house and his grandfather, and going back. And so that way they are literally expanding the household, because one day he will inherit everything that his father has. It will be his. Okay? After a certain time, the father will say to his son, this is at some point at the middle at midnight. This is very important. Okay? At midnight, he tells his son, "It's time for you to fetch your bride."
Hmm.
Okay? Keep that in mind. So then he gets all his stuff ready, and he sends a herald to the town where his bride is there. Now, I want you to understand, the woman, the bride, she spends the whole year or two, however long it takes, waiting for him for the day that he comes to literally to steal her away like a thief in the night. Okay? But he's waiting to take her away. Or she's waiting. And during that time, she's making preparations. She is purchasing things for her household. She's purchasing things for her wedding dress, for her garments, to make sure that she is without spot or wrinkle in preparation for the bridegroom to come. Okay? She has helpers. She has women who are there to help her. Okay? And when he sends a herald, the herald goes out there and he says, "Prepare for the wedding party. The bridegroom is coming. The bridegroom is coming." And so it's this scenario that we talk about in the parable of the 10 virgins, because they hear the voice of somebody saying, "The bridegroom comes." That's the herald. And they have to do this whole thing with the oil. Okay? Here's the question I'm going to ask, and I want you to answer. Now, Jamal, Yadi, Lipi, Ricardo, I want you guys to unmute, because I want you guys to answer me right away. Whoever answers first, I want you guys to answer. Okay? Here we go.
What prize do we get?
Knowledge. Okay? So here's what happens. When he comes, you have the situation. You're always told, you got to be ready. That's the story of the parable. So my question to you is, how many groups are there in the parable of the virgins?
Two,
Two?
three.
Three.
Yeah,
Three,
good
Three.
question.
right?
Three.
The thing is that
Oh, yeah, three. Yeah,
are
that's right.
you the foolish virgins, or are you the wise virgins, or are you the bride?
Gosh, it's so good.
Which one are
Huh.
you?
Yeah, we're the
Oh,
bride. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that before. We're the bride. We're not supposed to be any of it.
Exactly. You know where you heard it from? This guy.
I did? Oh, I was wondering. I said,
Right? So here's the thing. So the bridegroom is not coming for the virgins. The bridegroom is coming for his bride. But his bride is not mentioned in the parable. She's missing in the parable.
Huh.
So when he picks up his bride, the virgins all are supposed to follow after. The bridegroom with his bride go in first. Then, after them, those that follow after at his coming. Do you understand? Because once the bridegroom enters, he enters with his bride. The virgins are the friends of the bride. They're the ones who help the bride get ready. You understand? Jesus is making a comparison between those that are left after the bride has entered in. So the bride is the pre-trib. The 5 wise virgins are mid-trib. The 5 foolish virgins are post-trib.
you told me this before, and it's like it's as if I'm hearing it for the first time. What happened?
I don't know what
It's
happened.
because of the way it was put together in the study. Like it's so different. Like when you hear it like this, you know? Yeah.
Right? So I want to show you something. I am sending you guys my notes in the chat so you can have a comparison, a visual of everything. You have it in the chat right now. Okay.
So
I want you to notice some little details in all the gospels. Okay. In Matthew and Mark, Jesus is outside of the temple in the Mountain of Olives. In Luke, he's in the temple. In Matthew and Mark, the audience is with the disciples in private. In Luke, it's with a mixed crowd in open public.
So you're telling me that all three of these accounts, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are actually 3 different times referring to 3 different periods.
No, Matthew and Mark are referring to the same period. Luke is different.
Ah,
Okay. So in the events in Matthew are all initiated with the beginning of sorrows, and they go through to the end of all things. The events in Luke are characterized by kind of like similar events leading up to the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, and then followed by the scattering of Israel to the world, including our present day. All of which are referred to as not the beginning of sorrows, but the beginning of our redemption. When it says that they shall see the Son of Man coming in the cloud in the Gospel of Luke, that is not the end of the world, it's the beginning of our redemption. Okay? It's different. It's completely different. In the Gospel of Matthew and Mark, the sign of the Son of Man is seen first, right? Or at least in Matthew, the sign is seen first. In Mark, it just addresses his coming, because remember, it's condensed in Mark, right? However, the Son is seen in Matthew and Mark. He is seen in the clouds, plural. And all of this is after the beginning of sorrows. This is at the end. He is seen in multiple clouds. In Luke, he is seen by people coming in a cloud, singular, which happens before the beginnings of sorrows. Why? Simple. Because at the end, all of God's people are gathered up together into the clouds. So I'm sorry, when Jesus comes, he is coming in a cloud and he's gathering us to him in Luke. In Matthew and Mark, he's already gathered us and we are coming with him. In Matthew and Mark, he is coming with us in the clouds. One cloud per person. He has a cloud, each of us has a cloud. In Matthew and Mark, he's coming with his people. In Luke, he's coming for his people.
So that one is Matthew and Mark are before Luke,
No, Matthew and Mark are after Luke.
after Luke.
Yeah.
That's when he comes with us. That means we've already been. And Luke is the, okay.
Yeah. All right. The Son of Man is seen on multiple clouds in Matthew and Mark. Okay. But in the only other instances where there's a cloud that's mentioned covering or carrying Jesus include in Mountain of Transfiguration. All right. And there's an ascension of Jesus to heaven. That's also in a single cloud. The promise of his return to his people at the final reaping of the saints in the midpoint of the tribulation before the wrath. In all of these cases, only believers, those who love him, witness him coming in and on a cloud. He appears in one cloud for one people group. But Jesus is coming in a single cloud and is coming for his church. Okay? The gathering in Matthew and Mark is the end or the conclusion. It's when his elect are gathered from the four winds. But in Matthew and Mark. In Luke, the gathering is the beginning of the redemption, not the end of all things. The timing of the end in Matthew and Mark is it basically is that each event succeeds one another. This happens and then this happens and then this happens. The timing of the end in Luke is segmented. It's off center, so to speak. And
Yeah,
it's expected to take a really long time.
no way you see, there's no other way to see it that there's at least two comings.
Right.
Like
At least.
at
Right?
least. Yeah, at least.
Right. And what's interesting is when you take into account the rapture, which is the hidden, it's something that's hidden, right? It's not guaranteed for all believers. It's only for the overcomers. The rapture, the pre-trib is only for overcomers. Everyone else comes after. Okay?
What if you know what I was thinking? Like, what if the rapture, like the pre-trib rapture, is for the elect? Like,
No, because the
eh,
elect are being gathered at the four winds at the end.
oh yes. Never mind.
All right.
No, because
So
I was thinking like the people that are like doing God's work now. You know what I mean? Like the missionaries, the pastors. Like, do you know what I mean?
yeah. So let me give real quick. I don't want to lose my frame of thought on this, okay? In the Gospel of Matthew and Mark, it expressly mentions the great tribulation and tribulation. There is no tribulation mentioned at all in Luke. None. Not a single. The word tribulation does not appear anywhere in Luke about it. Okay. Um, the fig tree. Okay. The parable includes multiple trees in Luke, whereas it is only one tree in Matthew and Mark. So I want you guys to that the difference is that Matthew and Mark focus it is the same conversation. Mark is more of a condensed general version of Matthew, but it does not expressly mention any of those parables. The parables in Matthew are a warning to give you insight that there's at least, why? From Jesus's perspective, every time he mentions a parable in the future, it's two groups of two. Because in the groups of two for future are all at the end because there's only two groups left. But when he talks about the present, he talks about three groups. Those that receive 5, those that receive 2, and those that receive 1. And they correlate exactly with it pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib.
Wow, that's really good.
And when you look at the parable of the 10 virgins, you have two groups that are identical to the two groups from mid-trib to post-trib, but the third group is missing, which is the bride. So I think that based on the words of Jesus, you cannot be post-trib and be happy about it. Be honest, okay? And if you're going to really go, if you want to be mid-trib, you can do that. But you're only going to be among the five wise virgins. But if you really want to be in the no and in the okay, you got to be the bride. And here's the thing. In Luke is the only one that ends the whole thing with a warning to escape. To
Yeah,
escape all
I
those
noticed that
things.
too.
Notice that, to escape all those things, which includes that coming. You understand what I'm saying?
Why would you want to escape the coming?
Because that's the second. That's the five wise virgins.
Oh, so he wants you to escape that coming because he wants you to make the first.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah,
Exactly.
Man, I'm hanging up on this.
Okay.
Because I think the rapture is just stupid. Like I hate it. Like just the whole focus on it. I hate focusing on it. I just want to just like do the work of Jesus and like everybody's arguing over, oh, if it's today and then last Tuesday, we got people apologizing on the internet because the rapture didn't happen, and I'm just like, yeah. But
So about that, let's talk about that for just a minute. Okay. Everybody got hung up on the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, because it's supposed to happen at Feast of Trumpets. Let me explain something to you about the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, the Feast of Trumpets, it heralds a season of repentance. The next one that comes after the Feast of Trumpets is right now, Yom Kippur, sorry, the Feast of the Day of Atonement. Today is the Day of Atonement. Yesterday and today. Okay? So then you have after that the Feast of Tabernacles. And the Feast of Tabernacles has a certain number of days. Okay? Well, remember I told you guys about the whole thing about the whole thing about Apophis coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Apophis comes on April the 29th, April the 13th, 2029. Okay. If you go 3.5 years according to the Essene calendar, it if you go back exactly 3.5 years, you end on October the 13th, which is the seventh day into the Feast of Tabernacles. So I'm not saying the rapture is going to happen then. What I'm saying is that if the Apophis is the midpoint of the tribulation, then the window of repentance is now. This is why the feasts are celebrated the way they are. In Jewish culture, the Feast of Trumpets heralds the season of repentance. Because the Feast of Tabernacles is when the people go to tabernacle with the Lord. So I want you just to think post-trib is real. So is mid-trib. And so is pre-trib. That's why I tell you that all three are correct. If you look every single time that you talk about something that's pre-trib, it's always hidden. Always. Okay. And I'll give you an example of that. Okay. So this one with the parable of the 10 virgins, that's one. In the Old Testament, right? We have a situation where you have Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that whole situation with the King Nebuchadnezzar, you see all the events that are mimicking in a smaller scale the events of the Great Tribulation with the Antichrist, making his image to be seen and all that, right? Well, who's missing in that story?
The church.
No.
Oh,
Well, specifically in the story of Daniel's the three friends, the Shadrach, Meshach,
oh,
and
Daniel.
Daniel's missing, who happens to be called beloved. Isn't that what we're called?
Mm.
Hmm.
Aren't we
I was
always
always
told?
wondering, like, why is it that you had this random chapter of these guys, and then it goes back to Daniel. So I was wondering where,
Well,
like,
that's
that.
part of prophetic structure. It's communicating not just the things that are written, but the things that are being omitted. I've shared this stuff with you guys before in other Bible studies. There's other things. When something is not mentioned, it's there, not there by design too. So that's the end of my study. You guys got my notes. I'm down for questions.
Now my questions are answered. I'm still a little upset because I just don't like the idea of pre-trib. I don't like the idea of tribulation. Period. I think that we all go through tribulation. Like I think of most people when most Americans, they're like, the tribulation. I was like, yo, go to Iraq right now. Like, you go to other countries and you'll
Okay.
find tribulation that
So
we think tribulation is no air conditioning. You
yeah,
know,
okay.
like,
So let me just say something about the tribulation period, okay? The tribulation period is a period that says that there shall be trouble such as was never before that time nor after. And that technically is from the midpoint of the 7-year period. Okay. However, I want you also to recognize that the tribulation period, especially the second half, is not intended for believers that are following the Lord. It's intended for those who are disobedient. So the when you talk about the passages about outer darkness and where there should be weeping and gnashing of teeth, that's not hell. That's not hell,
I've told people that so many times.
right? Why? Is because when you look at the people, for example, remember I talked about the harvest and that the gleaning phase is for those that are the widows and the poor, the destitute, the foreigners. Remember that? Well,
Mhm.
that group, widows, widows, orphans, poor, destitute, foreigners, they are representative of those that are still disobedient. The five foolish. So we are not appointed to wrath. But Jesus said that if that evil servant does what he does at that time, he will appoint his portion with the unbelievers. He'll appoint his portion with the hypocrites. That's why the third servant who hides the coin goes into outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Because he goes through the wrath. The wrath is what? There is weeping and gnashing of teeth. So you have to, I know that, Jamal, I know that you're upset about the whole pre or post trib, but you can't think of that in terms of, oh, you just don't like it, because that's actually a reward system.
Yeah, I get it.
A pre-trib is not for believers. The pre-trib is for overcomers. It's for those who overcome, those who are living for God, doing what they're supposed to do every day, that are faithful, faithful, faithful. Okay? Remember, The faithful church of the seven letters to the seven churches in Revelation, the faithful church is what? It's Philadelphia. And Jesus says, because you've been faithful, I will keep you from the hour of temptation that is coming upon the whole earth. So I want you to think about this, that the pre-trib rapture is not a rapture for the church in general. It is only for those who overcome as a reward. That's what the Bible refers to as the harpazo, the catching away. And here's the thing. Those that are raptured are those that meet up together with those that have died in the Lord. Okay? Because those that have died in the Lord we will not precede them. They go up first because they paid the ultimate price. They died believing. Okay? So they get caught up first. We which are alive and remain get caught up together to meet with them in the air. That's what we do. That's for those who overcome. That's why Paul is constantly telling us to be as a bride without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. Not as the wise virgins, but as the bride. So the goal is faithfulness and to overcome so that you can participate in group number one. If you fail at group number one, you still got a period of time where, okay, it's not going to be so bad, but things are going to start changing. That's the five foolish virgins, that's group two. Or five wise virgins, that's group two. But if you still refuse to repent and you're still messed up, like, yeah, you're going to have your portion with the unbelievers. It's group three. Because God has not appointed us to wrath. That's not what he wants for us. At the same time, he doesn't want you to think of yourself as just a mere virgin. He wants you to think of yourself as the bride and to prepare as a bride. So think of it as a tiered reward system. It is a reward. The pre-trib rapture is not a blessing of salvation. It is a reward for faithfulness. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you get to go up in the first batch. And here's the thing, okay? The Bible says that everything in its own order. Christ the first fruits, then afterward them that are at his coming. Isn't that what it says? Hello? Somebody?
Yeah, yeah.
It says that, right? Christ the first fruits, and but afterward them that are at his coming. Well, we know that Jesus rose from the dead. When he rose, on the day that he rose, a lot of the dead rose with him. And since that time, others have died. And we, which are alive and remain, are going to get caught up together with them. Okay? Why? Because we who are alive and remain, being faithful and overcoming, are part of the first fruits. And if you have trouble accepting that, let me give you a verse. Okay? Because this is where a lot of us are like, man, okay, here we go. Let me see here. First fruits. Okay. So what I just read to you is in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. This is the resurrection chapter. He says, but every man, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 23, but every man in his own order, Christ the first fruits, afterward they that are Christ's at his coming. Okay? However, when you look at this other verse I'm going to show you, all right? Look in earlier it says that but now Christ is risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them that slept. Okay? So everybody who has slept is those who fall under the first fruits group. Okay? However, if you look at see here, James chapter 1, verse 18, look at what it says. Of his own will begat he us with the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Look at Revelation 14. These are they which are not defiled with women, right? These are the elect, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. So you look at the you look at the group just that God wants us. He wants us to be a part of first fruits. We should be a kind of first fruits of those who slept. We should be part of that group. Not that we should die, but that we should be faithful and overcoming. That we should seek him on a consistent basis and be faithful so that we partake in that coming. I want to show you another one too. Romans chapter 8, right? Beginning at verse 22. Look at what it says. For we know that the whole creation groans and travails in pain together until now. And not only they, but ourselves, we ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. Remember what we read? How that, about the redemption? So we want, okay, to be a part of the first fruits. If you don't succeed in the first fruits, you come after, but you have a chance. And if by the end of the midpoint, when it starts the wrath of God right before then, if at that point you haven't done it, then you are going to go through the wrath along with everybody else, where you will have weeping and gnashing of teeth. Jody, what do you think?
I think this is a lot. I think this is quite a bit to digest.
I know. But
Um,
here's the thing. How often do you guys hear about this or hear it like this?
not often at all.
At all. Which is why we have so many people that are like, oh, I'm pre-trib. Oh, I'm post-trib. Oh, I'm this. And I'm like, guys, there are verses that support all three.
Yeah.
Trying to argue with, oh, which one is right. In reality, they're all right. You just have to figure out which one you're going to be a part of. Because they all are based on categories. Pre-trib for overcomers, not all believers.
Mm-hmm.
Mid-trib for any believers that have their lamps, full of oil. Because the first group is the bride. The second group is the five wise virgins. The last group is the five foolish virgins who are kept out of the wedding feast.
So question, how
Here's
do you make sure that you are the bride? Like, how do you know?
well,
I always like question, I always question that.
um, I would say that there's there are certain things that you can look to do. Okay, if you go to, I think in the Old Testament, Malachi says something interesting. In Malachi chapter 6, I'm sorry, Malachi chapter 3, verse 16. It has this passage where it says, then they, and this is talking about the book of remembrance. Then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it, and a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord and that thought upon his name. And they shall be mine, says the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them as a man spares his own son that serves him. Then shall you return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serves God and him that serves not God. So this is where, you think about what it is that they did. Those that feared the Lord spake or spoke often to one another. They were in constant fellowship. They didn't try to skip out of fellowshipping with believers. They didn't want to hang out with unbelievers. They didn't want to just just so go up to church. No, they want to be a part of God's family.
Mm.
Uh, there are other passages, right? Generosity, being generous. We're not talking about tithing. We're talking about being generous, giving of what you have, helping those who need it, helping the poor, helping, visit the fatherless, the orphans, go to people in prison, feed the hungry, doing those things to help humanity recognize God who is alive in you.
Mm.
Because he's the one who works in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. It's about making him seen. Remember that Bible study I did about the Godhead? About
Yeah.
the nature of God? Okay, that. You doing your part to make him known.
Mm.
Faithful, keeping yourself pure, keeping yourself unspotted from the world. Don't get caught up in the things of the world.
Okay.
Fellowship with
So
believers.
so it's almost
Pray.
like,
Pray. Remember the Bible study that we did on prayer,
yeah,
the Bible study we did on worship.
yeah.
Yeah, I did those before this one on purpose.
Oh, perfect. That's good.
Okay.
That's good because I've actually been praying that way, and it's weird.
It is. It has a different
It does. It really does. It's been different. It hits different for sure. It's really weird. I even feel like I've been like sometimes when I put my son to bed, I like we pray I pray with him, but he's just so young that he doesn't like he gets it, but he doesn't get it.
yeah.
So we kind of like I'm like laying down with him praying, and even with that, I'm like, "Ugh, I feel like we should be just laying here." You know what I'm saying?
Well, I
But
sent you
yeah,
guys all of my notes so that you guys can see the comparison. I put some color coding and I shifted the verses to separate them so you can know the order of the chronology of those events. So that way you guys can have the notes that I have so you guys can review everything, read it for yourself.
is that on the was that on the
Chat. I
where do I
put it in
find
the
it?
chat.
On the WhatsApp chat or
No, on the chat here. I'm not putting that for everybody. I'm only putting it in here. I didn't want every single person from the community to listen to this Bible study because, to be honest, I don't think that everybody's really ready to hear this sort of thing because everybody has their own. It's a lot of people are overly dogmatic about their position to the point that they get easily offended.
mm-hmm.
So I wanted to just kind of keep this to the core group, us, because you guys have been with, my Bible study since the beginning.
But how about the prayer one? Where can I find that one? The notes on that.
I posted the link right after the Bible study, so it should be on WhatsApp,
Oh, okay, okay.
as well as the one for the worship as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, and if you
Yeah,
can't find it, we can repost it.
oh, I think I could. Oh, you know what? I might not be able to find it because I got a new phone and like everything that I've had like in the past is gone. So yeah, if
No,
you could
what
send it.
WhatsApp? If you back up WhatsApp, it should.
I didn't
Although I
back
don't
it
know
up
if you.
because I wanted to
Oh,
save
okay.
space.
Okay.
But I will say this, kind of speaking to what you were saying just now about kind of like knowing. So
Oh,
it's it,
it's on
it
your wife.
almost okay, cool.
She just.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no. So I was just thinking, it sounds like to me like you'll know what that you're okay. Let me just say it like this. So, like for example, you know where you kind of stand with God because you know, like in your heart, you'll know where you stand with God. So like, because there was a point in my life where I always kind of questioned like, where do I stand with God? And like, I know I'm not at the best where I could be and stuff like that. But like right now in my life, I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm in pretty good standing with God right now. Not that I want to boast about it or anything, but I just feel like I have a pretty solid relationship with him. Like I feel good about where I'm at with God. Is that kind of like the idea of it?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you have to also recognize, man, that the Bible says to examine yourselves to see whether you're in the faith, to have a maintenance system on a regular basis that you can just, you can be consistent about. You understand what I mean? I mean,
Hmm.
that just being on top of it instead of just kind of being lazy about it.
Right, right, right. Yeah, because it's very easy to fall off. Like, because you get like this burning fire inside of you, and then a couple like maybe like a week or two later, you're like, oh, where was that fire like a week ago? And then, it's like a struggle, but it's that continuation of that you have to re-kick yourself into the game there.
Well, guess what, man? I mean, that's why, that's why it takes work. It takes effort. That's why you get a reward for that. It's not, you have to labor. Jesus, he talks about, hey, there are people who've been laboring from the beginning and you just came on, you started right away, but you're going to get the same payment everybody else will. You understand? It's like you just need to just stay on top of it. Once you start, just stick with it and grow. Just make a decision every day to grow. To
Yeah, I think it's easier for me to think about it as in how is my relationship? Have I talked to God? Do I have I kept my relationship going?
Yeah,
I think that kind of
it's not just one or two things. It's all of it.
right, right.
That's why the Bible says, to him that knows how to do good and does it not, to him it is sin. So do good, and you shall eat the fruit of the land.
Perfect. Sounds like I'm on the right track.
Where's Jamal? Man, did he leave? Oh man, everybody's
Yeah,
gone.
he had to go too.
Oh,
Oh
dang.
man. All right, guys. Well, look, I'm gonna go ahead and pause the recording. You guys have any other questions for me before I press stop for recording?
No, you're
Nope.
good.
All right, here we go.